All right, everybody. Welcome to episode number 16 of the Never Been Easier podcast. I am here with Jason Marc Campbell. He is the host of the Selling with Love podcast. That is a podcast that has had over 1 million downloads and over 200 different interviews with some of the most thought-provoking thought leaders of our day and age. Jason is the author of a book that's being released this month, the day after Valentine's Day, February 15th, and that is the Selling with Love book. Jason, welcome to the show. I'm super stoked to have you on the podcast.
Hey, Abraham, thanks for having me, and thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Of course. So, Jason, the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast is, as I was sharing with you earlier, a lot of the people that are tuning into the show are people that are in their early stages of becoming a digital entrepreneur. A lot of them, they have personal brands, they're building businesses around their expertise. And one of the things that I'm big on is mastering the fundamentals, sales, product, marketing, fulfillment. But the one that I wanted to touch on with you today, because I know that you are an expert on this one, is sales. And a lot of the times when I'm coaching people on this subject, I notice there's so much resistance around the subject of sales, around selling something. There's a lot of people that believe that sales is slimy, that you have to trick people to get a sale, that you have to use weird techniques. And this is one of the areas where I encounter the most resistance and also lack of skill. Meaning people just approach it in the totally wrong way, kind of like sell me this pen, and they're just like, well, this pen's awesome. This pen can write in black, and I can actually erase the ink, and they just start throwing a bunch of features. So there's a lot of lack of skill around sales. But with you being an expert and approaching this subject from a different angle, let's start with, what does sales even mean to you?
Yeah, this is a good place to start. And everything you speak about, is the reason why I put together this book, the reason why I speak so much of the topic, because I've noticed particularly the people that are looking to build ethical businesses, like that have very strong values and really want to make a difference, tend to have a correlation to how much they have this resistance with sales. And I find it's such a shame, because these are the people that are truly looking to make an impact and make a difference. And yet you can embrace one of the most fundamental things that are necessary for you to generate revenue, which is the lifeblood of the business. If there's no revenue, there's no business, right? And so what I've done is, I really started investigating what is the reasons that this causes it. So I've started with actually giving a big definition of sales that I'm hoping a lot of your listeners are going to actually be able to start rallying behind and maybe having that different association. So the way I define sales is an energy exchange between conscious beings. Right now, I have a background. I've worked in personal growth a lot. So of course I need to use the word energy, but it's actually not insignificant why that word specifically is used. Because if you think of any product or service that you deliver, it takes energy to create it, to deliver it. If you look at the exchange that is the most common currency of exchange is money, and money is nothing more than stored energy. So on top of all the blocks we have around sales, we even have all the blocks that usually come with money. And so let's label everything at a common denominator, which is energy. And the whole thesis, or the hypothesis I bring forward and I speak about in the book, is all about the fact that there is one more piece of energy that is really powerful and present in every transaction, which is emotion, which stands for energy in motion. And so most of us, either we have shame and guilt blockages when it comes to sales. We have, what I call a fear pride paradox. We sabotage ourselves rationally. And what I ultimately want to do is bring people to an awareness that you can actually sell from a place of love. And what that means is, when you know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return, love is the emotion that is felt from both the buyer and the seller. So if we lay that as a foundation, I'd want to encourage people to consider what would happen if they would encourage themselves to do sales this way, how effective it is, and how good it feels.
I love that. And I want to dive first into, why is there so much resistance around this idea of selling? Why do people feel shame around asking for that energy exchange?
Yeah. It's fascinating because there's a few little sources that I've noticed as patterns from a lot of the people I've worked with, right? Um, I'll talk with the easiest one that's kind of easy to put aside, right? Shame and guilt blockages. It's a whole category I speak about. And one of the more obvious ones that you would have from having shame to sell is, imagine this, like you are at a family gathering and the people you love the most are all there. And you decide to sell, let's say a pen, since we use this as an example, and you have to go sell it to everybody for $1,000. And this is not a special pen, and nobody has a special need for this pen. It's just a pen you would pick up at Walmart or on Amazon, and it costs you $1. Let's say it was a fancy pen at $1. Actually, it was 20 pens for $1, right? And then you find that uncle who loves you so much, and you're like, hey, I'd love for you to buy this pen for $1,000. And they're like, okay, I'll give you the money. And they give you $1,000 and you give them this shit pen.
Mm.
What should be the feeling that you should have for having taken advantage of the, call it social credit or branding you had with your uncle or your auntie who really cared about you, and you decided to rip them off for $1,000 by giving them a pen? You would have a feeling of shame and guilt. And
Totally.
so at a foundation, the shame and guilt is there as a tool to tell you that, hey, you need to look at your value proposition. Need to look at your product and service and ensure that what you're selling is actually of greater value than what you're asking in return. So it's kind of like a checkpoint, right? So this would be a healthy way of looking at it. But the majority of your listeners, especially the ones that are building service-based business, whether you're also a consultant, a coach, you're self-employed, those shame and guilt blockages don't have as much to do with the product and service, but has a lot more to do with what's happening in your mind. And sources of this, my God, if we think first sales interactions we've had, like Abraham, if I told you to imagine a stereotypical salesperson, what's the image that comes to mind?
Totally. It's lacy, pushy, very like in your face, like this is the right product for you. You need to buy it today, right now, fast action discount.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with the words you use sleazy, and all these negative terms to define the salesperson. If I tell you, Abraham, I want you to become a salesperson, you need to embody the values you just listed that you hate. Why would anybody want to be a salesperson if we associated with such negative values? And a lot of people imagine a used car salesman or any kind of stockbroker that's like taking advantage. And the moment you're asked to sell, you need to step into an identity that you want nothing to do with. So you have your foot on the brake when you're trying to press on the gas, you're not going anywhere. And so this is something you really need to look into and start realizing that there's way better role models that exist when it comes to salespeople. I mean, for you, Abraham, I know you're building this podcast, you're building your business. I know a lot of your listeners will look up to you as somebody that they can say, hey, I can associate myself with sales when I look at someone like Abraham who sells, and he can do it from a place of integrity. So now we need more role models, but we can expand so much further because we start to realize that any person we idolize, any person we put up on a pedestal that has made a huge impact in the world. Now, I don't want to label anybody specific that might trigger people, so I'm going to go on both sides of the fences, but you might be looking up at an Elon Musk. You might be looking at a Donald Trump. You might be looking at an Oprah Winfrey. You might be looking at somebody that you're like, wow, look at them moving mountains. And you'll realize they all have something in common. They've embraced sales in a unique, beautiful way. And this is one of the statements I make into the book, is realizing that we are all salespeople all the time, whether it's selling an idea, a product or service, a relationship. I mean, what's the most, well, at least for the men listening, we all know one of the sales closing techniques that we more than likely will be using in our lifetimes, which is, will you marry me? Mm-hmm. Right? And so if you acknowledge that we are all salespeople, a big way that I suggest for people to get over these blocks when it comes to selling and the shame is to pick better role models and choose those identities when you want to sell. You want to channel your inner Elon Musk. You want to channel your inner Oprah. You want to step on a stage and realize, like, I'm not this sleazy salesperson. I'm this empowered impact entrepreneur, and I can sell my way. And that's a big, big leap to make.
I love this idea of picking better role models and understanding that a lot of the resistance that you have is because these pre-ingrained patterns of who you think a salesman is and how a salesman is supposed to sell. And my coach and I often run into scenarios where I teach someone the skill set of how to sell, and then we still run into self sabotaging behavior around selling. And it comes down to getting the beliefs right first around selling being something that's ethical, but also believes in their product and their ability to deliver, and it's interesting because I work with a lot of people that are just getting started. So the belief in their ability to deliver is something that's just getting developed, which, because there's a little bit of doubt in that ability, that a lot of times comes up in hesitation. And this is where we can maybe segue a little bit into love, because what I remind them of, okay, like you may still have some doubt about your abilities, but is your intention genuine? Then is your intention to serve? Is your intention to deliver genuine for this client? And can we utilize that point of integrity and alignment to channel into that sales conversation, and into showing, not just showing the client that you can help them, but in a way making them feel. So I want to talk a little bit about intention, which is the thing that's behind the action, which I know that's really where you're bringing a different perspective to the whole world of sales, and why I'm so excited about this book launching and this new world of, it's like this new layer of sales that's getting uncovered by the work that you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about intention.
Yeah, it's so important, and it's interesting because there's a movement happening, in the world right now, and I'm not the only person that's spearheading this. I've had a chance to reach out to so many other, call them warriors of enlightened sales, and they're peers. They're not competitors. They're pushing the same mission. But in the last 2 to 3 years, there's a book that's been called Selling from the Heart. There's another book that's called Sell from Love. There's another book that's called Sell Like We're Human. And there's more and more books that are bringing this new ethos of selling, where the intention is so primary to every sales interaction. And so, and you can even go, a little bit more on a tangent and talk about how you've had these moments that were not directly to sales, but they were still sales. Most of your listeners, and including yourself, Abraham, have been familiar with Start With Why, Simon Sinek's talk, which is all about the why is so important to make the impact. Well, what is the impact made? It's made by a sale. So the intention is actually, the way I use the word, I call it the why, and I actually call it the impact. And so in the book, I actually lay out 5 different loves in selling. And the first love that you need to have is you need to love the impact of every sale you make. And I go even more specific. And here's what's going to be beautiful. For those of you listening, you're actually going to be able to take notes on this part, because what happens is when you get specific and clear on this part, it starts fueling marketing material. It starts fueling sales scripts, and it starts actually getting people to ally with your cause, your intention, and your purpose. And they get excited about doing business with you, even when you're getting started. And so you first start and think about, well, if I sell an individual unit to this buyer, this client, what's the impact is that going to make for them? And just take a moment and free write it. And I want you to go crazy, right? Because once you start really laying out this in paper, your intention will come so clear in every conversation. So I'll use an example. Someone's selling, let's say, website designs, right? Let's say I'm a consultant and I design websites. You're like, well, if I sell this website and I design this brand for this client, they'll look better, they'll make better sales, they'll be more confident in the way that they present themselves, and they'll be able to talk to all their friends and be able to show their website. They'll feel excited about it. They'll sell more products. And let's say you make a stand and you choose to only work with ethical businesses. You can actually go on a tangent and start realizing, well, what's the ripple of that? If I'm supporting somebody who has a business of, raising charity funds for children of America, let's say that. Well, because you've done this website, now this cause has more awareness, which is helping solve a bigger problem. And now look, your little sale has a massive ripple to the world you want to see in the future. So how do you become intentional on that and write as much as you can? And a little caveat, if you're selling to consumers, you can look at the impact around their families and communities. And if you're selling to businesses, think about the ripple effect in the business. Like the fact that they're making more sales because you design their websites means they can hire more people. They can give raises to their employees. Like start looking at all the little ripples and you start realizing this sale is important. And I invite people to go a step further. And I think go on a global scale. Take a moment and think of the impact on the world. Like, when you say a small rock makes a puddle in a river, but it can turn into a big shift, or the butterfly effect. Like, I want you to think like this. And this is not insignificant. This is really important because every time you have that little voice that's going to make you hesitate and start judging your intention, you can always go back to this, look at it and be like, wow, yeah, if I start doing this for companies, we're going to start seeing the right businesses have more success. Less good, hardworking people are not going to fail because I didn't design their branding. They just went off and they couldn't get noticed in an economy that everybody needs to be noticed. I'm actually supporting entrepreneurship. I don't want to see a world where everybody's just buying from Amazon and Walmart. I want small entrepreneurs to succeed, and having good branding and design is a key part of that. Now you can see, if you're taking the time to write that, what's it going to look like on your website when you start talking about your mission, your values, what you believe in, why is your intention? It's all there. And you just need to take a few minutes to write it down. And there's one final piece of the impact that I think is often overlooked for people that are listening right now, because if you're an impact ethical business, you're often going to make yourself a martyr for the goals and the impact you want to make. So you stop thinking about the impact for yourself. And I want you to be selfish here, because it's not something that should be overlooked. And you should be starting to look at, well, if I make success with this business and I make these sales, what does that bring to me? Money, respect, family gets to be supported. And I think the more important one that I would encourage everyone to take notice is, if you're running an ethical businesses that's selling from the heart, selling with love, you need to become a role model that people are looking for on how it can be done. And so you have a duty to be successful using this method.
Wow, dude, I love that last one of being okay that you're also going to benefit from the sale. A lot of the times when, and I'll go back to my coaching because this is where a lot of the scenarios come up for me. When people are struggling with coaching, I point them to look at the people that you have helped. But you're giving me a framework for like taking these layers deeper. And I know this is one of them, right? Like you said, there's 5 of these, right? Yeah. And like, I've never even thought about the ripple effect. Like, I'm just like, look at the people that you're helping. But it's like, yeah, like there is a ripple effect because now those people are showing up way brighter in their own lives, which is now they're going on to their communities and they're showing up differently and affecting their communities differently, and so on and so forth. And I love taking it from the self to a global scale. So are you open to sharing some of the other things that people can take a look at as to develop their love for sales?
Of course. I'm an open book, Abraham. I'm here to give. I'm here to share the love. So you tell me where you want to bring this and how we can serve.
Amazing. Well, let's go to the next one. So we have love the impact. What's the next one?
All right. So as you start walking down this framework, the second love in selling with love is actually love the buyer. And what I suggest for people is the true way to show love is to understand. They talk about, if you want to be in a good relationship, communication is key. And communication is really making an effort to understand each other. And so how do you express love to the buyer? Start caring and start actually taking the time to understand who they truly are. Now, this you've heard before. You've heard, develop a, client persona, build an avatar, know who your target market is, which is in essence what I'm talking about. But I'm trying to make it a little more personal. See, I don't want you to just think generically that, oh yeah, I'm just going to pick a target market. I want you to feel that target market and truly start wondering, what is their life like? What are the problems they're facing? And how is it that someone like you stepping into their life is truly going to make that difference? I mean, you've taken the time to state what you think the impact is going to be on the previous step, But here, start really having these conversations. Now, I do have prescriptions, and it comes for people that have an existing business and maybe people who haven't done business yet. So if you have an existing business, yeah, do the surveys, do the polls, gather data. This will be critical to you. But also never forget to have conversations. Find ways to speak to your past buyers and ask them questions. Be curious about them, be interested in them, because you probably have already these target customers you've done business with and you love doing business with. They pay you on time, they get transformation, they love working with you, they're easy to work with. You're like, I just need to get more people like this. Talk to them, ask them, hey, what actually made you give money to do this? What was your life before we started doing business? What are some more details about, how was it going to work? What changes did you make since we started working together? And start really piecing this together. And here's the good part. For those who are coaches, you should have so much of this data just by doing the work with them. And so I'll tell you this, you start getting your first client, and if you've enjoyed that experience, it should become easier and better for you to understand the other target markets that you want to get, because you've taken so much time on helping one individual at a time. Powerful. Now, I know for some of you listening, you might not have had a sale yet. Does that mean you're stuck? You're screwed? You'll never understand? Of course, that's not the case. What I would suggest is to be a little crazy. And what I mean by that is, if you could pick, like, wave a magic wand, right? You could have any client in the world. What would that look like, right? Just go crazy a bit, be like, who exactly, if you could say, like, this is going to be the client I can work with, go and decide who that would be, right? And start with the basics, like demographically, like how old are they? What stage of life are they in? Divorced, married, children, work, changing careers, health crisis. Like, I'm talking about the big ones, like whether it's focused on health, wealth, relationships. If you're in coaching particularly, those will be categories. If you're in consulting, start picking maybe an industry, a type of size of business you want to work with. Just those generic parameters of picking a target market, and see which ones you can help. Like, you're like, yeah, this is an avatar I could help, or it'd be relevant for you to help them. There'd be a connection for you. They want to pay you. This one. Okay, let's take a little pause here. Abraham, I see you smiling. I know you know this one too. It's great that you want to help a lot of people that might be like your younger self, right? This is so common. And here's what I would suggest is that, would your younger self be in a position to actually pay for your services? Who knows? But oftentimes the answer is no. And so I would make sure you do pick a target market that is in a financial position to pay for your services. Because if you don't, you're being selfish. And hear me out on this. And I say this willingly, because if you just focus on people who can't pay you, your impact will not be as big as your dreams. You need to be able to make that impact, because if you're working with the clients that pay you, your business grows. Revenue is the first thing you need. And as your revenue grows, you'll optimize on the profits, and then you'll start becoming more optimized. And as you're doing your marketing, you're actually going to be giving away so much free content that is going to help those people who might not be in a financial position to help you. And you'll be able to do it in a way that is going to support your revenue generating activities. So yeah, you'll maybe do some free webinars. You might have some free content. You might be running a podcast. You might have your social media that's really helping those who might not be ready to buy from you yet. But you can only do that if you're generating revenue and having a successful business by working with the people who can pay you. This is one I work and struggle with as well, because I want to help a lot of people, but you can't help as many if you're not picking the customers that can truly pay you. So again, magic experiment, being a little crazy, pick that target. And here's the thing I get people to do an extra step is, once you're like, yeah, this looks pretty good, I'm going to ask you a magic question. If you had to be more specific, what else could you say? And this one trips people up, because we pick a target and we're like, yeah, but it's still like 10 million people. Get crazy specific, and you will see you'll be able to find places that they're hanging out. You'll be able to speak a language that they're speaking. You'll be much more relatable. And I'm even going to give a fun example of how people could actually reach out to these people. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm having fun here, and I love giving to Abe. So find yourself maybe being able to see places that they're hanging out and reach out to them and say, hey, I'm doing a research project with people who are just like you. who are looking to solve these kinds of problems. Could I ask you a few questions about it so I can write an article on how to address this issue? Here's what's beautiful about this. All guards are down, everyone wants to be heard, and you can reach out directly to your target market to do a research paper on the problem you're trying to solve. You're basically asking them to help you with your market research. But here's what you need to promise me. If you're doing this initiative, you need to write the article. And so once you've written that beautiful article, you'll be at a stage where some of these people, after you talk to them, might go, hey, can you help me with this actually? And you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm actually doing this training and I could, include you, or yeah, I actually do coaching. If you'd like, we could explore this conversation. But you don't sell on that first call, you sell on the second call. And so this might be an interesting way for people to not only understand the buyer, but to find the buyers. And I could go on a tangent, but I think, Abe, what do you think? Would you approve of this strategy?
I love this new client acquisition strategy. This is one that I've never heard of, but I mean, people's favorite subject are themselves, right? At the end of the day, to have someone take the time to ask you questions and then to go on and write an article about your specific situation and in it show you that they can help you. I can see how this could lead to you actually getting some clients, but more importantly, to you understanding the person that you want to serve and develop that love for the buyer. The way I used to do this personally back in the days, I would create a little Loom video. I would take a look at their business. I would put their website in the background, and then I would take the time to say, okay, this is what you're currently doing with your marketing. This is my breakdown, and this is what I would do differently. If I was in your position, if you're interested in working with me, please feel free to reach out. And that would generate a lot of conversations because that personal touch, like going the extra mile really sets you apart from everybody that's just sending a cold email. It's like, hey, did you hear back from my last email? I never heard back from you. Would you like to opt out? But okay, so these are 2, and there are 5 of these, right? I want to dive into one more before I ask you a really important question that I'll save for after you go into the next one, because I think it's going to be a really nice segue. So what's a third one? And both of these have been great. Like you could create so many, like you've given so much more value than most people keep behind paid walls just in this conversation. The people could literally just go into this and solve so many of the mindset issues that keep people from selling, and more importantly, from feeling good about selling and selling authentically. I think like for me, one of the things that I love getting on sales calls is that like people say like, wow, like this didn't even feel like a sales call. Like I feel like you actually want to help me and you're not just trying to sell me. And I think it's because I understand a lot of what you're sharing, and I know that a lot of people don't. So what's another love for that we can kind of tune into to start selling from the heart and start selling with love?
Yeah. Well, if we're picking 3, we're going to cover the foundational 3. I'll reveal what the 5 are, and we don't need to go into that many details because you'll realize as long as you're aware, you're going to start making shifts, right? So the third love is actually love the product, right? Love the product that you're selling. I already talked about this a bit at the beginning, selling that pen for $1,000 that's worth $1. If you don't love the product that you're selling, you're going to be the one stopping every sale that you make. Buyer won't even have to do anything. You're going to sabotage yourself because you're not feeling enthusiastic. You're not excited about selling what you have. Now, here's the number 1 mistake. Well, there's 2. The first one is I don't feel good enough about my product because of this mental chatter, the self-sabotaging mind. And so I'm going to do what is the only decision I usually make when it comes to feeling better about what I sell, which is discount the price. Mm-hmm. And that is not because you're trying to serve the buyer, it's because you're trying to stop the pain of the mental chatter of the value you provide.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah. And so this one, here's what I would suggest for people to overcome this lack of confidence in the quality of the product you sell is take the, face value retail price of whatever it is you sell and imagine it to be 10 times more expensive. And I want you to take a moment to start writing down what would be features I would need to include in this product So I would feel comfortable selling it at that price, the 10 times more. And a couple things happen. The moment it's 10 times more, it's not even relative to what you existingly had. So you need to step into creativity. You need to step into abundance. You need to step into the energy of love. And now your mind that's thinking love is creative. It's not being limited by past. So you're like, wow, okay, well, maybe I could include this feature. I could, some of the people that fits in coaching be like, well, I could make it a journey that's longer, or I could have more sessions, or I could actually fly to them in person, or I could bring other experts and I could like, you start thinking of all the things you could bundle together. And then when you've taken the time to do that, you can step back and be like, all right, out of everything I came up with, what are some of the ones that would be easy to apply? You might realize some of these actually don't have that much cost to them, and you might actually be able to bundle them in your existing product. One of them might be, yeah, I could actually just really hold them by the hand the moment they purchase to really make sure that they start implementing the fundamentals. And already that you're like, well, maybe I should revamp my client onboarding. And by doing so, you will sell more confidently because you've taken the time to really paint a path that causes the transformation you want to make. Same thing for consultants. You'll have that onboarding really laid out. So you start finding white space to optimize the product. Now, the other side that I see some issues with, making blocks around loving the product is the whole fake it till you make it kind of ethos that exists out there. And especially for the first time people looking to make their first sales, this might be something you're rallying yourself around. And I want to give you a different perspective, which is don't fake it, make it. Just make the product amazing. I know it demands a bit more work, but my God, especially when you're picking up your first clients, there's something beautiful about the first sale. Not a restrictive type of environment. It's actually an abundant type of environment. Like if I'd go to Abraham and let's say I'm selling business services and I say, Abraham, I've taken the time to study your business more personally than any of these off-the-shelf consultants ever will. I'm going to make sure to bring you to success more than any other person that will take you on as another client, because to me, you're not another client. You are the client. And my role is to ensure that you have the wildest, most successful case study to start building the foundation of what I want to do for so many more people. And you're going to be the first person I'm going to do this with. And whatever I lack in perceived experience is going to be overcome by my increase in work ethic, ethical practices, over deliverance, and guarantees that I want to make sure you're going to be the most successful person with this. I want to work with you, and you're going to be the most important client I ever get. And so I'd love to you give me a shot. This is the kind of language that you can use when you just get started. The clients you're going to get at the beginning are going to be the most handheld, amazingly taken care of clients. So don't sell yourself short on how much you're going to over deliver for these people. And when you make the sale, deliver.
There are so many gems here. I love the idea of allowing yourself to dream of what your product would look if it was 10 times more expensive, because it allows you to dream. And I actually had an experience last year where I had my first ayahuasca experience with a company called One Heart, and it's called One Heart Journeys. But what I noticed going through their experience is how much love was infused into the whole experience, how many magical moments they thoughtfully placed at very specific and meaningful moments in that 7-day journey that I had with them. And it motivated me to come back to my business and add a little bit, because the way I used to operate my business was very transactional. It's like, you pay me for my service and I give you that service and then we're done working together. But that experience showed me that you can actually go beyond the A leads to B leads to C of business and add a little bit of magic, add a little bit of love, add a little bit of emotion to make your product better, but also connect more. And now when I get on sales calls, I know, like, I'm excited about some of the things that people are going to experience in the journey. So some of the stuff that I don't even mention in the call, because they're little surprises that are sprinkled throughout the journey. And I know for a fact that when I'm pitching my product, which I don't even, it's more like I'm sharing, right? At this point, when I'm sharing what my product looks like, a there's a different energy that's being communicated, which is what I want to talk about here in a second. Um, but there are two more which we're gonna leave inside of the book, but I would love to share. I would love for you to share which ones they are, and then we can kind of move on to that next part.
Yeah,
Right.
very simple. I'm glad we did the first three because those are the ones that mostly get overlooked. And they're the foundation of intention, right? That's where we all started. When you've done the work with these three, everything else starts falling into place. The fourth love is simple. Love the process. Love the process of selling. Get excited about doing that sales calls, having those scripts, doing that webinar, running those Facebook ads, Instagram ads, LinkedIn ads, whatever advertising you have to do, the marketing, all of it is the process of sales. And I'll make it simple. It's not a question of manipulation. It's a question of empathy. What is the language that is necessary for you to speak for people to understand the value you want to provide to them? And so start loving the process. That's the key. And if you've done the first three, everything else you do on the process is going to be miles ahead of anybody else in your competition because you've laced the entire experience with love. This is brilliant. And finally, the last one, we've already touched on it since most of the listeners, the product is the self. And that's the last one. It's love the self. The journey of sales is one that makes you face fears of rejection, brings challenges, emotional roller coasters. So understand that you have to have some compassion for yourself. You have to build those routines and have these personal growth experiences to really keep you on the path, because that's a journey of a lifetime.
Totally. I love it. I love it. So eh, I want to start kind of heading in a different direction, and it's how allowing yourself to shower yourself in all of these different loves, right? It starts changing your energy, right? If I think we can, with this audience, we can talk about the fact that at a molecular level, everything's energy, right? And we can nurture and we can curate different things in our environment, whether it's the music that we listen to, the foods that we eat, the books that we read, right? The people that we surround ourselves with, to change our own energy. And I think a lot of what you're doing, what I'm getting from this small part of what you're sharing of your whole process, I know it's a sliver of it, is you're starting to alter, right, your whole energetic vibration around this process of selling. So what starts to happen? Because I know this has the intention behind the action has an effect on how the action is received, right? So can you talk a little bit about that?
So if I understand your question correctly, would you like me to paint a picture of what happens if somebody starts applying these methods in their own business?
Yes.
Okay. Here's things that you might expect to happen the moment you start applying these principles. You might wake up in the morning and realize that you have so many people you need to reach out to, and you have this inner excitement because each and every one of them is somebody you might change their lives. So you see that there's emails to write, there's social media posts to make, there's phone calls to have, there's meetings to be completed, and each of them come with a little level of enthusiasm and excitement that you've never had before. There's no more resistance because you realize that every single one of those little actions is going to move the needle to something that matters. You'll feel in so much alignment in the way that you operate your business that every single day feels like this. And when you get into planning bigger and bigger goals, you know that it's always anchored towards an impact that you've always wanted to make. When you have the conversations with people you sell to, you start listening to them. And then they start asking you, why are you even doing this? And you can recall so vividly the impact you truly want to make. And you can start with the things you want to do for the world, why the single sale is a pivotal impact moment for bringing that mission forward, and how their specific life is going to be transformed. And they'll have so much alignment with the authenticity that you bring to the conversation, the integrity that you have in what you want to deliver. And they're just so excited that it's a refreshing way of doing business that they've never seen before. And eventually you'll start realizing that some of your peers in the community that are listening to this are also starting to do the same. And the tide gets lifted for everyone. So even for the people that you wanted to serve, maybe it was your younger self that wasn't able to afford your product and services, because you've taken a stand and you're operating your business with so much integrity, you're lifting the tide for the entire world, because there's no more corruption. There's no more of these manipulative squeezing out of people. And everyone who is less fortunate is still getting a residual abundance from you acting with so much power. So that might be an idea.
Sliver of it, right? Dude, Jason, I know that we're barely scratching the surface of this idea of selling this with love, and this is really the tip of the iceberg, right? You're getting ready to launch a book, right, on this subject, which is, it launches February 15th, right? As you were going through just this framework of the 5 loves, I personally learned so much, and I'm super excited to go back over this conversation and take some notes to be able to start passing this down to the people that I coach. I actually see myself buying a lot of your copies to actually, one of the things that I do in the beginning, one of the things that, I told you that after going through that experience, I created certain things with my business to infuse a little bit more magic. One of the things that I do is I send a little welcome box, and I got this really cool box that I designed, and in the cover it says, "You're fucking awesome." Like it's all bold and all vibrant, and they open it, it's seriously like, "You're fucking awesome," and it just recognizes what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And in that box, I include certain books that I think are going to aid people in their journey, plus other resources and a little letter from me. And I look forward to putting your book in that little box, because I know that it's gonna help people, with a very important pillar of what it means to run a successful business and to be a successful entrepreneur. And one that, like, if you want to learn how to fish, you need to learn how to sell. So tell us a little bit more about your book, when it's coming out, where can people find it, and where can people learn more about you? I know you have a podcast, you have some resources. I know you have some free resources around this subject. Maybe you can point people towards those.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm hoping for everybody that listened, this has shifted something and has allowed you to look at sales differently. As I made that promise at the beginning, I'm hoping I was able to deliver on that promise. This is really my life's work. I mean, I'm so passionate about being able to make this shift, because to me, I've went through an experience where I got taken advantage of on a negative sales interaction, and one of my contributions is, I don't want to see douchey sales and marketing practices exist in the world. And so if I can teach ethical businesses to sell with love, the marketplace will not tolerate the douchey sales and marketing. There will be no place for them. And so everyone who applies these methods is a pillar to bring forward this mission and the reasons why I do what I do. And so for those who'd want to connect more, sellingwithlove.com, you can find my podcast. I interview people around sales to reinforce these ideas strongly. If you're interested in purchasing the book, just go to sellingwithlove.com/Abraham. I'm going to put together a unique package for the people that are listening to this podcast. And what I'll include in there is more than I've given to anybody else who are purchasing the book on the first week. You're going to get it whether you buy the book or not. It's just going to be my way to share love. You're going to get a cheat sheet, which actually asks you powerful questions on how you can sell with love. For each of the 5 loves, there's 3 questions that will actually make sure you're clear on how you can step into love in every sales interaction. I'm going to include also a meditation that allows you to connect with your buyer persona. So every time you need to make a call or you need to write that email, you'll feel really connected to them. And on top of that, I'll have a first chapter of the book included. So for anybody who goes to sellingwithlove.com/Abraham, you'll get all of that. And if you're loving this mission and you want to be a part of it, get a copy of the book. That is a big support. And during the first month, getting able to hit the charts and move as many copies as possible is a huge gift to me. And we even have some bonuses for those who buy 3 copies and more, whether for your colleagues or your family members. And so all those details will be sent to you when you go to sellingwithlove.com/Abraham. And I'll make sure all those gifts are made available for everyone.
Beautiful, guys. I'll make sure to include that link in the show notes. Jason, thank you for putting that together for the people that tune into the show. I'm sure they are going to appreciate it. And I know for a fact that we're scratching the surface of what you can deliver on the subject. I look forward to hopefully having you on a part 2. if you guys dig this episode, reach out to Jason, let him know that you guys want a part 2, and we'll make sure to schedule something at a later point. This book's about to blow up. Jason's about to blow up. We're catching him early on his journey. So make sure to let's take advantage of it and let's get him back sooner than later.
Well, it was a pleasure to be here, everyone. Thanks for everything.
Likewise, Jason.